Every child is unique, obviously. They have their own passions, their own interests, their own what have you. And in that same way, every parent is unique and how each family system works. And I think that was the biggest challenge, is trying to make sure that each child and family are being nurtured and supported in the way that they need, in a system that is really designed more to be cogs in a machine. It's a system that is not designed for personalization, and yet every child and every student and every family needs different types of supports and different types of encouragement. And so really finding ways to try and individually tailor how we give each child the tools that they need for success.
Today's guest is Erin Tarr, a best-selling author, keynote speaker, educator, and confidence coach with over 20 years of experience. Under 40 recipient and an in-demand facilitator and keynote speaker for schools. Erin's effusive energy and passion for empowering young girls is contagious. Erin is experienced speaking on topics concerning teens and tweens, including success habits, mental health, social media usage, friendships, and family relationships. Erin lives in the middle of the cornfields in Illinois with her husband Adam and their 3 fierce girls. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So, after reading that, what is one of the most courageous things you have ever done?
Quitting a full-time job and deciding I'm going to bet on myself and continue my business full-time without any side gig. No more side gig. All girls, all coaching, all in all the time. That was very courageous.
Oh, wow. So, what took you on that journey of being, you were head of a private school. So,
Yes.
what was it about that experience that inspired you to start your own business?
So I have always been an educator at heart. I have a hard time remembering what I didn't love to, whatever I was reading or learning or understanding, that I wanted to share that with other people. So that directly led me into the field of education. And working in a private school was really a microcosm opportunity where I got to see kids go from literally birth all the way through 8th grade, because we had a daycare all the way up through middle school here in our, it would be called year 9 in the UK, but 8th grade here. And I was able to see really how kids developed throughout that entire time and really have a bird's eye view to that. And I knew that although I loved my work at the school, there was something more for me. There was something more I was meant to do. And when I had my first daughter and then second daughter, I really started to see how passionate I was about raising strong women, which is not something that had ever been on my radar prior to having my own children. I am an equal opportunity educator. I love all genders and working with all of them. But when I had my own daughters, all of a sudden it became very personal. So I left my job at the school so that I could take a job that was not as emotionally demanding from me. And so that was what I did from 9 to 5. And then on the side was where I really started my business, where I was coaching girls and working with families and their moms and really empowering that next generation of females. And I did that, both sides of that, for the better part of a decade before I finally took the leap shortly after COVID and said, hey, I'm going to do this full time. This is what I'm meant to do. This is where my passion is. This is where all my energy needs to be going. So that's the story.
Wow. And you speak about teens and tweens. Typically, what age is tweens, for the listeners that may not know?
Yeah, the way I view it, it's a very fluid term. So I don't know that there's a standard textbook definition. I usually talk about literally the ages of 8 to
Mhm.
28 are what I work with the most. It really has to do with more their developmental level than their actual age, because I see
Mhm.
tween as that age where they're really starting to get self-conscious, not be as confident in who they are.
Mhm.
Age 11 is where we see a huge drop off in the confidence of girls, and that's, statistically
Mhm.
proven. But for some girls that starts even earlier for a variety of reasons. So it's really that whole level of development of tween all the way into teen, and even after that through college and into early career, where we're still trying to figure out who we are, who we want to be, how we want to show up in this world, that type of thing. So yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I know you've just said you only work with girls. Is there a reason? I know you've said you don't mind, you're open to all genders, but is there a reason other than you're beautiful girls, I'm sure, that you
That
want to be with girls,
right. That really is where that start. I'm a girl. I was born a girl. I've been a girl my entire life, and I know exactly what that's like. I was raised as one of three daughters.
Oh,
I have
nice.
three daughters. So it really has to do with feeling like I understand that challenge and those challenges more directly. That being said, I have worked with boys. If
Mhm.
when a parent comes to me and says, "Hey, I have a boy, but I really think they need your coaching or what you have to offer," yada yada, I say, "Hey, I will talk to him, and if that's something he's interested in, I'm more than happy to do it." So I don't advertise that I work with boys, but also the book that I recently wrote that became an Amazon bestseller is it's not gender specific by any stretch of the imagination. None of the stories or the advice or any of it is like, oh, you have to be a girl to do this. It's very gender neutral, and the lessons are completely applicable to even adults, not just even teens and tweens. So all genders, all ages.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, because I'll ask you about your book in a bit. But first, while at school, you oversaw thousands of children education. What were your challenges and you saw families experiencing constantly over time?
Yes. It's so interesting because every child is unique. Obviously, they have their own
Mhm.
passions, their own interests, their own what have you. And in that same way, every parent is unique and how each family system works. And I think that was the biggest challenge is
Mhm.
trying to make sure that each child and family are being nurtured and supported in the way that they need in a system that is really designed more to be cogs in a machine. It's a system that is not designed for personalization, and yet
Mm.
every child and every student and every family needs different types of supports and different types of encouragement. And so, really finding ways to try and individually tailor how we give each child the tools that they need for success. So that's really a lot of what I saw when I started my own business of coaching. Like, how can I help fill in these gaps that the overall school system is not designed to
Mm.
fill at this time? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, for me myself, I know what it's like, the school system, because I was dyslexic and no one picked it up. So I can totally understand that and relate to that. Tell me more about your business. What does that look like and what the programs look like?
Absolutely. So everything is based on my fiercest framework. So I
Mhm.
consider a fierce life one in which you get to wake up and over 90% of the time, you are excited about what you
Mhm.
get to do that day. So I know as a middle aged adult that there comes a point in our lives where we're like, how did we get here? What are we doing now? Is this what we're doing? How does this work?
Mhm.
And I really decided specifically for my daughters and then for their friends and their generation, I said, you know what? If we gave them some of these tools earlier in life, they could create from the beginning exactly where they want themselves to go. And when they start to see themselves go off track, they could make like little 2 or 3 degree turns, be like, oh, I thought I wanted to go this way, but maybe I just want to do something a little different, a little different. And instead of waking up one day and feeling like, I need to blow up my whole life and make a 180-degree turn at the age of 40, every year they could kind of reevaluate and think, what might I want to do differently this year? How might I want to, so that I end up where I want to be, so that I'm living my fiercest life, where I wake up every day excited about my life and what I'm doing. So that's the goal. And with that goal in mind, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I have a membership group for moms, and of course, speaking and talking about the book and this framework with pretty much anyone who will listen, because I feel so passionately about helping this next generation learn to do. Our mantra is, I choose my thoughts in order to create a life I love so that I can change the world. And so we start with that basic learning how to choose our thoughts. What does that look like? What are the elements of that? What are the tools of that? Because when we start there and have that foundation, we can create this life we love. And I truly, passionately believe that each individual kiddo has an impact to make in this world. And when they've chosen their thoughts and created a life they love, that change and that impact is going to be exponential, as opposed to someone who's really passionate about changing the world, but like has a lot of their own baggage and their own stuff, and they're not loving their life or their job or they're this, and also trying to do that same thing. So I'm really just trying to give the whole world a better shot. I'm giving each individual a better shot.
And why not? We can all do with the help. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's $1 million question. You have 3 daughters of your own. Were they involved in developing and implementing your programs? Were they
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes, constantly. I run everything by them. They've always been, when I do group programs. So for the first probably 8 years of the program, almost everything was group. I did some one-on-one, but there was tons of group experiences, and they were always in those groups, always giving me feedback, always helping me. And I would say, I want to do this activity or this activity. Which one do you think would be more fun? Or which one do you think would, get the message through? And then afterwards, we would always be reflective. And I'd say, okay, what was the top 3 things you think you took away from that? So always having them help me understand that teenage brain again. And that, at the time they were actually tweens, now they're teens. But helping me understand, what are you guys getting versus what I'm trying to accomplish? And are those things in tandem? Are those working together? And so constantly, they are my biggest critics as well as biggest cheerleaders. So that's wonderful. And I just had my littlest turned 8 yesterday, and she was like, is it time for me to be a part of everything? Because she's much younger than my other 2. So I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. So my 8-year-old is a little younger. So she didn't quite get in on the early years of my business. So now she's starting to get into the mix, and she'll be involved as well. So absolutely. They are my inspiration and my why, and the vehicle for helping me be better than I would be otherwise.
Brilliant. And that's what we all want. As a parent, if you have 2 children that are polar opposites, one could be high energy and one could be less than motivated. So how would parents benefit from learning, teaching them, and the skill sets? How can parents best support them?
Yes, absolutely. And most of our kids are, it's so interesting from one family seeing just kids that are totally different. And the skills that especially are contained in the Fierce Morning and the Fiercest framework are skills that have been shown to benefit people regardless of what their personality style is, their motivation style, their Enneagram number, their you name it, because these are tiny habits that they figure out how to best fit into their life based on who they are. So we give the skill, and then that's a lot of where the coaching comes in, is figuring out how do different people who live on different sides of the world, who have different personalities, who have different circumstances, who come from different socioeconomic levels, how do they all implement these skills in a way that works for them and helps them to be more successful? And when I say successful, don't hear me as one specific definition of success, but success in what that looks like for them. So these skills, for example, feeling gratitude, that is the number one thing that I teach. How do we implement gratitude practices into our daily life? And so regardless if you are someone who likes to sleep until noon and roll out of bed and, whatever, or you're the person who gets up at the crack of dawn and makes their bed and goes out for a 5K run. Either way, both of those people will benefit
Yeah.
tremendously from learning how to implement gratitude practices every day in their life. It's science. I didn't do the studies, but I read the studies. I know it works. And that's the type of thing that we're really giving kids when their brains are still developing, so that it becomes a lifelong habit that really can benefit them for the rest of their life. So parents can take heart and know that regardless of where their kiddo's at, this can be helpful.
How have you seen COVID impact teens and tweens? I mean, in their relationships, how can their parents help their children to return to somewhat a pre-COVID world in terms of their relationships?
It's really interesting, actually, because
Mm,
every time I'm asked this question, it's a few months later, and we keep getting more data and more info and having
mm,
more of a bird's eye view of what has happened. And for example, my own child, who is, she'll be 15, she's almost 15, and she missed out on most of her seventh grade year, part of sixth grade, and part of eighth grade. So it was like her year 7, 8, and 9 were all disrupted because of COVID. And those are critical years for
mm,
deciding that you can take risks and developing relationships with your peers that are not a part of your family situation. So prior to this, a lot of times you're friends with people who your family are friends with. But when you start to get into your 7, 8, and 9, that's when you start to make your own friendships and your parents don't know them. And you start to organize your own activities and you start to take
mm.
healthy risks with trying new things and deciding, oh, I like this new thing and I'm going to go out, even though I don't know what's happening. And my kiddo missed out on those years. And we're seeing her have to play catch up and figure out, oh, can I take risks? Is that something I can do? How do I navigate new friendships without the help of my parents? How do I do these things? And so, depending on what stage your child was in and how locked down your area was, we're just seeing a lot of, there's been a lot of talk about these speech delays of kids that were born during COVID. Well, every single stage has important things that are happening in those stages, and there's going to be delays for every single group. And so a lot of it is socialization, a lot of it is taking brave risks. Academics, I'm not really worried about. That doesn't bother me. Everybody will catch up on academics. We learn what we need to learn when we need to learn it. That
Yeah.
does not bother me at all. It's more the flexing of our muscles to become productive members of society, which is our socialization, which is those types of things that I am really seeing that kids need support on. They need, where you would normally expect a 16 or 17-year-old to be able to go out and do XYZ, they might not be ready yet because they might still be in a 13, 14 mindset. And so we need to give them those supports and understand that they just missed out on that. And it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
But we can't just expect them to take this huge developmental leap without the support that they need. So, yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
seeing.
definitely. Yes. And I think it's made a big change in a lot of people's life, not just teenagers as well, but supporting them and making them realize that it's okay that everyone learns at a different stage, everyone's different, but it's okay to try things as well. Like you were saying about their confidence, and maybe at some stage I'll do that. And like, because you are a confident coach as well. Tell me more
Exactly,
about that.
exactly. That's what we do regardless, because there's always, even pre-COVID, there were always going to be kiddos and students who needed that extra support, who needed a little bit more coaching around how do I take a risk? How do I make a friend? How do I, it comes naturally to some kids and it doesn't to other kids. And so I'm happy to facilitate all of those things and help them to really embrace just having, a life that they love.
Brilliant, yes. And you have created a quick and easy 7-step methodology. Tell me more about that. That sounds really interesting.
Yes, so that's based on the fiercest framework. So every single letter, FIERCE, and then I kind of have an S and a T. So I have a fierce framework and a fiercest framework, and they're the same, but the fiercest framework adds a couple of things to it. But it's really designed. It's what my book
Mm.
is based on. It's really designed to be able to give them quick and easy tools that they can use both first thing in the morning to start their day out right. And then when you hit that afternoon slump, you have these same tools that you can like revert right back to and be like, oh, which one of those do I need to pull on to become a little more confident in this situation, or to wake myself up a little bit, or to become more mindful and to focus on what I'm doing? What do I need right now? And so feel gratitude, I am statements, exercise, reading, creating, and encouraging others. Those are the 6 things. And I can break those down further because the face value of the word isn't always exactly what you would initially think. But if you can teach kids something when their brains are developing at these tween and teen ages, if you can give them these tools when they're 25, 35, 45, they're going to remember them. We remember things from our teenage years, unfortunately, sometimes that are just that that if you taught me last week, I might forget. But if you taught me when I was a teenager, like we remember like ridiculous, like dissecting that frog in biology class or whatever. So that's the idea, is to give them these tools, get them in that habit of using them on a regular basis so that they can always be able to call on those, regardless of what challenges they face in the future. So it is really simple. Most of these steps, you can do all of them probably in easily less than 10 minutes, maybe even less than 5.
Ooh. That's a challenge in itself.
Exactly.
You have your Triumphant Together free video course available on your website. What would parents be surprised to find in that?
Ooh. So the basic of the Triumph Together video course is, and it's free to anyone, like you said. If they just log into my blog, there'll be a little pop-up that says, hey, do you want to see this? Absolutely. It comes to your email every day. And I think the biggest thing that parents would be surprised about with that is just how simple it is to stay connected to our kiddos when we're being intentional about it. And so it's very bite-sized. Each day is just like, here's one thing that you can think about or you can do. And if you do this today and then tomorrow and then the next day, your relationship with your teenager is going to be better, for lack of a better way to say it. It's going to be better. It's going to improve. No matter if you're starting from we have a great relationship, to we have a really bad relationship, to we have a okay relationship, wherever you're starting, the simple things that come in this video course are going to help it be even better.
That's brilliant. And who doesn't want a better relationship?
Exactly. With anyone in your life, let alone, your teen or tween. So, yeah.
After having worked with hundreds of teens and tweens, what do you think it is about your programs that empower these girls to really flourish?
There's 2 things that I really believe. Number 1, you can never have too many adults that believe in you. It's just not possible. And so having a non-family member who sees you and sees your greatness and then reflects that greatness back to you, I don't know that there's anything more empowering to that. Even as an adult, when someone who has no vested interest in my success or lack of success sees me and says something kind and empowering and true, there's just no greater feeling. And I'm an adult with a fully formed brain, right? And I don't have people on a regular basis, pushing me around at the lockers, or, trying to squeeze my way into a lunchroom, or, being embarrassed when I say the wrong answer in school. Like, I don't even have all these negative things happening to me that are tricky for teens and tweens. And still, it's such a powerful experience for me. So to have that isn't one thing, is to have that adult that believes in you relentlessly, that can see how amazing you are. And the second thing is recognizing that you're not alone. That we, especially as teen girls, I don't know about teen boys because I'm not a teen boy. I never was a teen boy. I don't have teen boys, but especially as teen girls, have this false assumption that what we're going through and what we're experiencing, we're the only one that has ever been through this ever. It's the worst for us. No one understands. And then all of a sudden, when you get in a group of people, or you hear from a coach like, oh yes, I have 3 other clients that are dealing with this too. Would you like to hear how they've dealt with it? Or would you like to hear some suggestions about how we've talked about it? Or if they're in a group or at a conference or at a workshop, and they're all of a sudden like, wait, all of you have experience. All of you have had this experience. Okay. It feels so much better to not be alone. So those are the 2 things that I just really feel makes such an empowering difference for girls to recognize they're not alone and have someone who just relentlessly believes in them that doesn't have to. So,
Absolutely. I can't echo that enough. You are never alone. Reach out to someone and get the help.
yes, yes.
So, Erin, tell me all about your book.
So it's called Your Fierce Life, 6 Simple Steps to Daily Confidence for Teens. I did have one of my young adult friends say, I posted about this on my Instagram and all of my 20-something friends are asking when the book's coming for 20-somethings. And I'm like, well, they could also read the teen book, but you never know what's next on the docket. But it really goes over the Fierce framework, and it has a story about each one. So the Feel Gratitude chapter, there's a story about that, because stories are how our brains absorb information the best. There is then the science behind why is this part of the Fierce Morning. I didn't just make this stuff out of my head. These are tools that I have learned through my personal development journey, through my leadership journey. And there is psychological proof that these things are tools that we should be using. So there's that quick understanding. It's only a page long. There's usually a coloring sheet. There's a journal page. So each chapter kind of has a lot of reflection so that you can really absorb that tool. And so in an ideal world, I would have parents read the book with their kid, or have 2 copies and they read it, separately, but at the same time, and take each chapter a week. So read a chapter, do the activities in it, be thinking about it, talking about that particular habit or tool for a week. And so to read it over the course of 6 weeks, I think would be ideal, because then you can just slowly add on each habit throughout the 6 weeks. And then at the back, I also have a whole guide for families, a whole guide for teachers. How do you bring these tools to your whole family? Whether you have 2-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 22-year-olds, you can bring these tools to your entire family or your school or your classroom. There are ways to bring them in to really benefit any group that you're a part of.
That's absolutely excellent.
I'm excited about it.
What resources do you recommend, daily steps, tools, to anyone that wants to improve confidence in their teens and tween girls?
The simplest thing that I can recommend, that if someone literally takes this right now from listening to this and starts to do it tomorrow, you need no tools, you need no skills, you need no nothing. And it's from Mel Robbins. It's called the High Five Habit. And she recommends every morning going to the mirror and giving yourself a high five in the mirror. And this works for several reasons. And one of the reasons has to do with other parts of my book as well. But I suggest this because it's so ridiculously simple. You do not have to think about it. You just go do it. Even though you feel silly, you do it, because our brains have no negative association with high fives. Our brains know when you do a high five, that's something positive. I don't even know what positive is, but it is. And so your brain automatically gets into a more positive state when you give yourself a high five. And normally, especially when you start doing it, you feel so silly doing it that you also smile. And again, your brain assumes like, hey, if I'm smiling, something good must be happening. So you're starting your day more confidently on a more positive note immediately when you give yourself a high five in the mirror. And totally, that's totally something that I took from Mel Robbins, and it integrates nicely with other parts of my book, but that's the number one tip that I would give someone, because it's so ridiculously easy.
Yes, absolutely. And go ahead and give yourselves a high five right now.
Exactly.
So where can the listeners find you online, your book? What's your website, Erin?
Yes, so my website is my name, Erin Tarr, ERINTARR.com. And I have a page that has podcast freebies on it. So it's where you can find my book. It's where you can sign up for my newsletter if you're interested, all sorts of things. So it's erintarr.com/podcast freebie, FREEBIE. So I assume you'll link that in the notes or something.
Absolutely. Everything will be in the show notes. You can go directly and link with Erin. So thank you for sharing your courageous, insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others and parents. Erin Tarr.
Thank you for having me, Anita. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So we're all about creating the courage to be fearless here. So my final question to you is, what is your definition of courage?
My definition of courage is similar to Brene Brown's definition of vulnerability, which is showing up when you can't control the outcome. It's not easy, but it's true.